Amina moved through the grocery store like a fading shadow, her body present but her spirit stretched thin by years of silent sacrifice, the kind that mothers performed without applause, without recognition, without complaint, the kind of sacrifice that gnawed at her bones until she could barely stand but still urged her forward because two small faces at home depended on her, trusted her, loved her with the blind purity only children possessed, and she would sooner stop breathing than let them feel hunger while she still had strength to stand. So she skipped breakfast that morning and lunch the day before and dinner 2 nights before that, stringing together small sips of tea and scraps of leftover bread that she pretended were enough, forcing her body to function on fumes because every rupee she saved meant another meal for her children. But today even the fumes felt thin, the world dimming around her edges like an old photograph losing color as she walked slowly down the aisles, gripping her nearly empty basket as though its weight might anchor her to consciousness, her trembling fingers brushing against price tags that seemed to rise every time she blinked, her heart tightening painfully as she calculated what she could afford, what she had to let go, and what she could stretch into something that resembled dinner. She paused at the rice shelf, staring at the familiar bag of broken rice she usually bought because it was cheaper, but even that small comfort had climbed beyond reach, mocking her with its bright label and inflated price while the tiny voice inside her whispered that she could survive another day without eating. She'd done it before, she'd do it again because her children never asked for more than she could give, they never complained, they never knew that her dizziness came from hunger rather than exhaustion. They never knew that she waited until they were asleep before drinking water to quiet the ache in her stomach, pretending she had eaten earlier so they wouldn't worry. She took a slow breath and returned the rice to the shelf, swallowing the tightness in her throat as she adjusted her scarf and turned toward the bread aisle, willing her shaking hands to steady as she selected a small loaf that she could ration into tiny slices, stretching it across 2 days if she was careful. If she ate nothing, if she pretended again that her stomach didn't burn with emptiness, she continued through the store, choosing items with the precision of someone navigating a battlefield. Milk because her youngest needed it, tea leaves because warm tea was the only comfort she allowed herself, and a tiny packet of eggs she hoped she could stretch into omelets that looked fuller than they were if she mixed in enough water or leftover vegetables, until her basket contained only the barest essentials, items chosen not by desire but by necessity, each selected slowly as she forced herself to ignore the dizziness creeping up the back of her skull. When she finally approached the checkout line, she saw only the total in her mind, hoping desperately that she had counted correctly, that her math wasn't muddled by hunger or fatigue, that she wouldn't face the embarrassment of returning items at the counter again like she had 2 months ago when she had miscounted by a few rupees and the line behind her had sighed impatiently while she apologized with tears burning her eyes. But today the store was quieter and she prayed silently that things would go smoothly as she stepped forward, placing her items gently on the counter as though afraid of disturbing them, unaware that the cashier, Armin, a quiet young man with observant eyes, had already noticed the tremble in her hands, the hollow look in her eyes, the worn edges of her purse, and the way she stood with the stiffness of someone holding herself together through sheer will. He greeted each customer with the same polite tone. But when Amina approached, something in her posture softened his voice unconsciously as he said, "Assalamu alaikum." And when she lifted her gaze to respond, her eyes were respectful but dim, like candles struggling against a strong wind, and he scanned her items slowly, not out of hesitation but out of concern, watching the slight sway in her stance, the way she clasped her fingers together tightly to stop them from shaking, and as he read the total aloud, 482 rupees. He saw the flicker of fear that crossed her face, a fleeting expression she tried to hide as she reopened her purse and counted her notes, her movements slow, hesitant, deliberate, until she realized what he had already sensed. She was short, not by much, but by enough to force a choice she clearly didn't want to make, and when she whispered, "Can you remove the eggs?" It wasn't just a request, it was surrender, resignation, a mother letting go of the only protein she'd planned to bring home. And her voice trembled so faintly that Armin felt something twist sharply in his chest. He reached out instinctively, steadying the carton as it almost slipped from her weakened fingers, and the brief brush of her skin against his made him freeze. Her hand was cold in a way that wasn't natural, not in the warmth of the store, not in a city where winters were mild, not in a woman who looked otherwise strong but clearly hadn't eaten properly in far too long. And in that moment, he understood in a way that words could not convey. She was starving, truly starving, sacrificing herself quietly so her children could eat. And when she whispered, "I'm fine," in response to his soft question, "Madam, have you eaten today?" he knew with certainty that the denial was a shield she had built over years of hardship, a shield she needed to survive, a shield he couldn't shatter but wished he could ease. So he scanned the eggs again, adding them back without a word, and slipped a small emergency rice packet into her bag under the guise of a store special, applying a manual discount that dropped her total significantly, pretending it was routine, pretending it was policy, pretending she wasn't fighting back tears as she stared at the new price with disbelief before whispering a shaky, "Shukriya," that felt like it carried the weight of her entire world.